Thank you for watching Conscious Consumer Network. The live stream broadcast is free to view. You can pause and rewind live broadcasts to catch up, or view shows at a later date by accessing our free archives of all shows. Check out our broadcast guide to see what's on. You can show your support by donating to our network support fund. Follow us on Facebook and Twitter, or subscribe to the monthly newsletter for updates. We thank you for supporting free and independent media.
I wanna feel your fire, baby, let me dance in your love. I wanna feel your fire, baby, let me dance in your love. I wanna feel your fire, baby, let me dance in your love. I wanna feel your fire, rising from the flames, that dies only to burn again. Let me dance in the rhythm of your flame. If I burn, let me die to burn again. If I burn, let me die to burn again.
Aloha, everyone, and welcome to the Herbal Knowledge Keeper Show with Dakota Granny Woman and myself, Blue Star Deer Woman. And we are a full bloom production. And today we have a fabulous show. I'm so excited about this. The title of our show is Spagyrics and Medical Astrology. And I have to admit, this is the first time I've been introduced to this topic. And I recently heard from a friend. She said, never heard of it. And I said, well, where do you get a load of this? And one of the things that we're doing today is Dakota and I will be live for this first hour. And then promptly at noon, we will be running a pre-recorded interview that we did with Will Morris, who is going to also add and present a wealth of knowledge on the understanding of medical astrology. So we hope you enjoy our show. Occasionally you'll see a phone number on the broadcast screen. You're always welcome to call in, join our conversation, and you can join the chat room if you go to the live feed of CCN and ask questions or just join the conversation via the chat room. And we want to thank Conscious Consumer Network.tv, our co-producers, Biggie and Mel. They do a phenomenal job with this network, and they're really bringing some beautiful programs. And please take the time to check out some of the other broadcasts that they are delivering, because we have an age range of beautiful intergenerational presenters. And there's just some fabulous shows that, ranging from age 12 up into our 70s. So please take the time. And what we always like to use as an example is if you can donate as much as one coffee a week to CCN, you have no idea how helpful that can be. Because remember, we are running platforms that are not being supported by corporations and, those people that would censor us. We are a non-censored platform. And if you like the delivery of real news, authentic people, please drop a $5 bill into the CCN cup. And so we're going to go from here. And Dakota Granny Woman, if you don't know about her, you definitely want to look up on our web pages, read about Dakota. She's a 5th generation Choctaw Granny Woman, and she has created what we call the Herbal database. And this is a database that has hundreds of thousands of input of a far range of medicinal healing, homeopathic approaches, Western and Eastern medicine, all kinds of recipes, guides. It's amazing database. Please take the time to explore it at herbaldatabase.org. So with that being said, Dakota, come on in here and tell us more about what we're doing today.
Well, first of all, you're right. It is an obscure topic, and that's only because it's so old, and we've been misinformed to some extent. For example, Spagyrics, you could translate that as plant alchemy. Now, I remember when I was growing up, we were always told that alchemy was a precursor to proper chemistry, and that once chemistry got on its feet and developed, we had no use for alchemy anymore. It was just kind of hocus pocus. But it turns out, especially in the field of herbal medicine, herbal alchemy, Spagyrics, is still very much alive and completely valid and offers us some really unique herbal properties. So we're familiar with tinctures and the decoctions and the ointments and all of that sort of thing. But with spagyric formulas, we get some other properties of plants that are unique. And so we're going to get into that. I'm going to show you the database where if you are a member of the database, you'll be able to learn about spagyrics. I should say that this is really herbal medicine taken to the heights, where it's not so much kitchen medicine, not so much folk medicine, but where you're going to have to start building your own little laboratory, and you can get pretty elaborate with that if it catches on. It takes a lot of time and patience and education to make spagyric preparations. If you don't have the time and the equipment, there are some wonderful suppliers of spagyric elixirs and tinctures and that sort of thing. And I'm going to show you where you can get those, but there's some good products out there. So spagyrics is very much alive, and I would say growing, as we're starting to understand the true history of herbal medicine. And one of the things that is interesting about it, and why I tied it in with our fabulous interview with Will Morris, is that it also uses information about astrology and the influence of the planets on the plant world and how that intersects with health. Mm-hmm. Now, Will Morris is somebody that I have the highest respect for, and many herbalists are very familiar with him. He is very well versed. He has a degree in science and medical science, and right off the bat, you would think that somebody with a degree in medical science would not be interested in astrology, right? But as you'll see in this interview, there's a lot of scientific evidence that astrology does intersect with our health, and he is has a master's in Oriental medicine, has worked up a couple of doctoral programs in Oriental medicine for the College of Oriental Medicine that he was professor emeritus. There's so much information about Will Morris online. You can just look him up, and he's written some books. Anyway, he's fabulous and just a great guy, very helpful, wonderful, intuitive, and he's also available for consultations. Once you see his interview, you're probably going to want your own consultation. Totally. So that information will be on the screen so that you can get in touch with him. Mm-hmm. So anyway, I think we'll just jump into the spagyrics, and I'm going to show you the database where you can go and learn about it. So I'm going to do some screen sharing now.
Yeah, and while you're doing the screen sharing, for viewers that are here for the first time, if you always return to episode 1 of the Herbal Knowledge Keepers, you will see the full basic introduction of how to use this site. But it is our intention to, each time we do the show, to kind of talk about how you're maneuvering through this.
Okay, so I will make some reminders as I go through. This is the opening screen where you can read how to use the site. This upward arrow lifts the information panel up, and I would recommend that any newbies read that. The downward arrow brings the information panel down. Always the label that's in the middle of the screen is the active information screen link, and then everything attached to it is pertinent to whatever is in the center here. So the way we're going to get to Spagyrics, there are several paths. There's always more than one path. That's how nature works. So we're going to use this search panel. By the way, that is not a clickable button. That search button just says you can enter your term here. So I'm going to just start by typing in Spagyrics. And you see we've got several choices. I'm going to just start with the first label, Spagyrics. And here we go. You see color coding. The yellow color there has something to do with preparations. You see this purple color, that's going to be about phytochemicals. Green has to do with therapeutics. And the white could be just about anything. It's usually the plants. So these are all topics that we have to explore when we're getting into Spagyrics, plant alchemy. I'm going to lift this information panel up here and show you that we've got a lot of videos that you can watch to learn more about it. The Spagyric mineral salts of Gaudicola. That's pretty exciting. I have Gaudicola going in this year, and one of my favorite herbs. And then, so any of these you can click on, and it will take you directly to another page on another tab. Down below, you see information. And I'm going to go ahead and read this introduction here. It says that we shouldn't consider Spagyrics and alchemy as a whole merely as a preliminary stage of the later scientific chemistry. It's just another way of looking at nature and its powers. The alchemy in the Western schools is based mostly on the Egyptian tradition, and that was transmitted by the Arabs, and their theoretical and practical alchemy was transmitted to the Europeans, who merged it with the Christian tradition. There were a lot of alchemists that were Benedictine monks, for example. Mm-hmm. Now, alchemy is divided into the branch that works chiefly with minerals, and then there's another branch that works chiefly with plants, and that one was named Spagyrics by Paracelsus. We'll take a look at him later. What?
I just have to, you just sparked a memory, and it's just a little tidbit I'd like to share.
Yeah.
When you spoke about the Benedictine, right?
Okay.
Early on, as a child, I had suffered from asthma, and my mother was given a Saint Benedict, like a medal, right?
Uh-huh.
And she was told, put it in a glass of water and have me drink the water.
Oh.
And you just sparked that. I hadn't, but I just thought I had to mention it.
Okay. That's really interesting, because as you'll see with Spagyrics, there is a lot of symbology attached to it. And of course, we know that certain belief systems can be healing all by themselves. So if the Benedictine monks were actually known practitioners of plant alchemy especially, then they would be considered to have very special healing powers. Interesting.
Yeah.
So
And that's the alchemical way.
Yeah.
It's a very energetic field. It's very empowered by intention. And that's the magic that we are reclaiming again in our medicine.
Absolutely.
Mm-hmm.
All right. So where do we go from here? Now, let me just show you. You always have choices when working with the database. And so you just kind of look over your options here and go to whatever interests you. It's not like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, although sometimes in parts of the database, I do have things put in a sequence where, it might be a little mini course or something like that. So we're going to start over on the side here. These things are associated with spagyrics, mineral salts. One of the special aspects of the spagyric medicines is that they always contain the salts of the plant. The, oh dear, I've got Facebook signals coming up here. You don't need to see that. One of the problems that we have when we're making herbal medicines is that we, for example, will tincture them, and the plant material itself will sit in an alcohol for a period of time, and then we filter the plant material out, squeeze it real good, and then throw it away.
Mm-hmm.
And unfortunately, what's happening is that the minerals are in that mark. It's still in the plant, and we probably have not extracted them all. In fact, I'll just say we have not.
Mm-hmm.
So we're losing part of the medicine of the plant when that happens. In spagyrics, what they do, let's say you're making a tincture, and you'll extract it, for example, in alcohol. Then after you filter it and you have that residue, that plant material, what they do is called calcination. They burn it and repeatedly, preferably at a low temperature, but they'll burn it and then put it in a mortar and pestle after it's burned and grind it up real good, and then burn it again, then grind it, then burn it again. And they'll keep doing that until they have removed everything except for the actual mineral salts. And you know when that's happened because there'll be kind of a white color, maybe not pure white. Different plants have different minerals. But as soon as you get down to that white or grayish white color, then you have now the pure mineral salts that were in the plant. Those are added back in to the tincture.
Wow, that's fascinating because I made tinctures for years. I was just all excited because they went into my compost pile.
Yeah.
And I was enriching the earth and the soil that I would then garden with. But that's really interesting.
Yeah. And here is a video that talks about the importance of the minerals. So you could watch that here.
Mm-hmm.
So let's go back to spagyrics. By the way, down at the bottom, you see a breadcrumb trail. And that's an easy way to get back to where you started from. All right, so now let's get into the 4 elements. That's another aspect of the vitalistic traditional medicine, was that there were always considered to be at least 4 elements, sometimes 5. So here you can read about the fire element, water, air, earth. And it's not so much talking about fire itself, but the emission of light and heat, and certain things are signified here. Warmth, expansion. This is the active principle. Water, of course, is a liquid state, and you can read here about what the different elements do. But every plant contains all of these elements in different ratios, and in spagyrics, one of the things they aim for is to separate the elements from each other, purify them, and then recombine them after they've been purified. Their aim is to extract not only the physical properties of the plant, but also the plant intelligence itself, the spirit of the plant or the soul of the plant, recombine them in such a way that at their purest form, so that when you take them into your body, you have this essence of the plant spirit working on all of those levels. And the only way that they see to do it is first you separate everything. And this is what makes it a little bit tedious to do, because it requires special equipment, special knowledge, not only of these elements and how to extract them, but what the different plants contain in terms of the ratios and all of that. So in Western herbalism, there's the 4 elements, but there's also something called the quintessence. Now in like the Ayurveda, they can have 5 elements. I think that, as I recall, the Chinese do too. So you could call this the 5th element, the quintessence. And this isn't any of the actual 4 elements, but it's thought of as permeating all of them. So you could sort of think of it as the 0-point field, or you could think of it as like a form of qi. And so without, or the life force, it's like without this, you would just have dead matter. Okay. And so some of the techniques aim to also introduce the quintessence. Of course, it's in everything, but to really bring it out so that it's very active in the formula. All right. So then let's see, I'm going to be keeping an eye on the time. I'm probably going to go kind of fast through this, but get into the database and dig into it. It's fascinating. So let's just go to some of the products, because most of you, once you get into this, you're just going to want to buy some. Here are links where that you can go to that have very high quality. Of course, that's the only quality there is in Spagyrics, but where you can actually buy these products. And they're not that expensive. When you see how much goes into making them, it's kind of surprising that they're not that expensive. But I want to show you some of the apparatus that they use. One of the things they use to distill with is called a pelican. And here's a picture of it. So what they do is with something like this is they have the tincturing material in the bottom, the plant material and the alcohol and all of that, and they bring it up to, the aim is always to keep it on as low a heat as you can and still release the vapors, the essential oils. And those essential oils travel up through these pipes and cool down up here and then come back down. Like this is just the vapor coming up here. Right. It cools down and then drips back down into the pot, only to be heated and travel. Again, this is called circulation. And so you circulate like this completely, usually at least 7 times. Now, it can take years to make a single Spagyric formula, depending on what you're doing. But, I mean, it's usually going to take weeks.
This is the
months.
same, we're talking about a distiller.
Yeah,
right?
This is a pelican vessel. It's called a pelican, and it costs about $500.
Well, I have a video I'd like to submit to your database because I did a video in Hawaii of a copper distiller.
Okay,
and I believe
that would probably be different.
Yeah,
because copper is just used to distill, like whiskey is distilled in a copper, and essential oils are distilled in copper.
Yeah, it was an essential oil. This is different.
Yeah, this is different. Very different.
Okay.
And it doesn't recirculate the same way, and it needs to be glass, and the shape is important. Remember the interview we had with Anne, where she was showing us some of the old alchemical tools in Germany. Yes. And she was mentioned how the shape itself is very important. And this gets into the fourth phase of water and some of the new physics that we're understanding how these liquids interact with the shape, and like they need to spiral around, and it's not good to just have something just flatly sitting there. So
this is like what we've referred to as like sacred geometry.
Yeah.
Really recognizing movement and shape affects everything.
Yeah.
That's why are we still living in square houses?
Okay, now this is another apparatus that is used. This is Soxhlet extraction and recovery. This is a Spagyric distiller. I'm only showing the top part of it. This thing costs about $5,000. Okay? So this is a whole other method of doing this. And again, things are repeated and repeated, and mineral salts are taken out and processed and put back in. So, and under here, this area, if you want to actually buy your own lab equipment and get started making it yourself, there are links here and where you can buy your own vessels, and you can get started kind of inexpensively, with some basic tools. So let's see where we're at with the time.
We're good. We have about another 30.
Okay. So check out this area, alchemy and medicine. And again, you have some videos here, the healing system of Paracelsus. And here we have the alchemical symbols. There's a whole language there. And then there are alchemical texts. Now, these are the actual texts in English that you can read online. And they are some pretty heavy reading. But if you want help, this link takes you to a course on how to read alchemical texts. Okay. So that's where I would start.
Is that like when we're reading alchemical texts, is that like understanding some of the chemistry symbols? Or?
The terminology is very different. And yeah, and the symbols, and the language that's used is a kind of obscure. Now let's just talk about, for example, mercury. Every plant contains, oops, I have to spell it right or it won't come up. Every plant, and this is a part that can be real obscure if you don't understand it. So here's mercury under alchemy. All right, so there are 3 philosophical principles called essentials in Spagyrics: mercury, sulfur, and salt. And so they're not talking about like quicksilver type mercury, although in the mineral alchemy they will. But here, if you read through this, you understand that when they're saying mercury, they're talking about the vital power, the spirit, the sense of spirit of life, the waters of life, the volatile, the etheric. So the essential oils are mercury in the plant. So every plant that has essential oils has mercury, okay? And so you work with figuring out how to extract the mercury of the plant. And then sulfur, we're not talking about this stinky, smelly sulfur. Again, this is a principle that's involved. This is the soul consciousness, the Atman, the central point of consciousness. And it's the fiery, radiant, burning principle. So sulfur is worked with in that way. And of course, there's a link here if you want to read about it. This link, you can click on that and it's going to take you to a long article that really explains sulfur. So this is a good starting point for anybody that wants to get into this. Go to the 3 philosophical principles. Salt, and these are, the mineral salts, but in more than that, they're related to the actual physical matter, the body of the plant, the physical manifestation, the vehicle, okay? So every operation considers these 3 philosophical principles. And so let's jump over to, well, here's a difference between spagyric and non-spagyric remedies. That's an important one to get into. And I think that one of the points I wanted to make is elixirs are getting to be really popular now. But it's important to understand that the classical elixirs were spagyrics, and they were very sophisticated. The term deteriorated over time just to mean like a using some kind of an alcohol as a medium for different kind of flavorings. But these were in classical medicine. They were very specific pharmaceutical types of preparations. There were different plants were combined in a very careful way for a certain effect on the body. And so we had the elixirs. We also had essences, and you learn more about what is an essence. This is going to tell you what an essence is.
Well, then, if we were looking at specific effects on the body, we might be addressing, like, if we're looking at it from an alchemical perspective, the Ayurvedic, like addressing the hot, the cold, which, okay.
Yeah, that and the body systems and that sort of thing.
Nice.
Ayurveda's, a lot of spagyrics is very similar to Ayurvedic medicine because they also used it and continued to use it. So when you start studying spagyrics, it intersects with Ayurveda very sweetly, and you start to understand more about each of those systems by studying both of them. Now, this is an interesting term here. This is another preparation, a crisis. And what that is it is, the elixirs are mixtures of extracts of various species of plants, but this is a preparation of the recombined extracts of just one plant. So to put it very crudely, one of the things we like to do with an herb is make a decoction and a tincture. And when we make, and that's like, a cooked liquid tea type thing.
Right.
So we make our tea, and then we've also made a tincture, and we drop some tincture into the tea. That's, a very crude example, but they'll make different extracts, but it's only one plant.
Well, would this be an instance too where you might reintegrate the salt?
Oh yeah, yeah.
Okay.
Well,
anything that came from the plant.
Anything, yeah.
Okay.
You might have made a tincture with the plant. You might have made an essence. You might have made.
Wow.
There are other preparations that they make as well, and it would all be combined. Or you might make, an extract of the plant over a different period of time. Now, when they're doing their medicine, they pay close attention to astrology. So each plant is considered to be ruled by one or more planets, often more than one. And so they would harvest at a certain time when the planet was in a good relationship with the plant.
Nice.
And they would, it's most important was when to start making the preparation. And so they would look at astrology to know when is the right time to do that. So let's go back to spagyrics. And
one other question, Dakota. Where's the relationship here, like with Bach remedies?
There is a relationship. In fact, also with homeopathy. So, for example, Hahnemann, who is said to be the father of homeopathy, he really took most of his work from Paracelsus. Now, he hated Paracelsus and said it was all a bunch of bunk, but when you study homeopathy and Paracelsus, you discover that most of homeopathy came from the work of Paracelsus. He just changed some terms and made a few different adjustments. Now, the Bach flower essences are also related to the spagyrics. And so they are kind of all intersected. You wouldn't call the flower essences technically spagyric preparations, but a lot of the principles are real similar. Okay. And by the way, one of the projects I'm working on now in this is to add the flower essences to the database. But nice. I want to go over here to medical astrology for a minute.
Sure.
And so here, this is a good video explaining just using 7 plants and 7 planets, how all of that works. Mm-hmm. And let's pull this up here and see what information we have down here.
Nice.
So all of these links, of course, up here, click on them and you can see about the ruling planets. And this is a good book, The Astrological Judgment Practice of Physics. There's a French statistician who collected 10,000 astrological data from medical doctors and politicians and everything. And he did all of that because he didn't believe in astrology and he wanted to prove that it was bunk. And so he did all of this work. And then at the end of it, he said, I was wrong.
Wow.
And so this, let's see now, I'm going to go down. There's a whole bunch of other information here about different studies and individuals who did work to uncover if there was actually an effect from the planets. So you can read about them here. For example, Takada of Toho University could prove that the composition of human blood changes with the 11-year sunspot rhythm. And a change also occurs during the daily rotation of the Earth. And sunrise is especially important. He says man is a living sundial.
So this would actually offer a pathway, a bridge to understanding how the sun right now in her changes is affecting our makeup, our biological rhythms.
Yeah. Although you have to understand what the sun is doing, which right now is kind of a bit of a mystery. But
and what category are we in right now to come back to this?
Let me
references
move it up here. Let's see, bring this down.
So bring the window down.
Medical astrology. So this is just a basic introduction to it. But I want to read this one quote, which is, I think, a great introduction to what's to follow. In 1970, there was another attempt to critically examine astrology. And after that, this was Jan Tuner and John Anthony West, who you've probably heard of. They said it's becoming increasingly difficult to avoid the impression that Pythagoras, Plato, Plotinus, Ptolemy, and Aquinas, Magnus, Kepler were right in their assessment of astrology, at least in principle, while all of modern science is wrong. So in the interview we had with Will, he mentioned the Casebooks project, and you'll find that here. This is a digital collection of medical records that from 1596 to 1634 that shows the effects of the planets on human health. Nice. And there are many records there. You've also got, remember he talked about the English almanacs, 1550 to 1700. This is a similar project where English almanacs, oops, let me pull that back up. This thing I want to drop, it's in my way. Okay, English almanacs, astrology, and popular medicine. So this is another bit of data that we have to show these relationships. You'll find that kind of information throughout this section. This area here, planets and their plants. So here you can learn about, it's not in great depth, but you can learn the basics about what the planet is said to do in terms of its effect on the body, and you can find what plants are ruled by that.
Nice. And I wanted to let the viewers know that when the pre-recorded video with Will Morris, our interview with him, follows this presentation, the links to Will Morris will be included in that. They'll also be included when in the blurb that accompanies YouTube videos and CCN's website.
And they're in the database. So let me just show you Will for a second.
Yeah, that's a good idea.
I'm going to type in Will Morris here.
Another breadcrumb.
Yeah. So let me pull this up. This is just a bit about him. So these are articles that he's written. President of the Academy of Oriental Medicine in Austin. He's president emeritus now. He was also CEO. He received the Master of Oriental Medicine from Emperor's College and his doctorate of Oriental Medicine from the Samra University. Published a bunch of papers in journals, lectured all over the place, and at conferences, institutions. Clinician, educator, innovator. He's tirelessly served the traditional Chinese community at large and worked to improve the quality of Chinese medicine education in the United States. And these are two books that he's written. The Li Shizhen Pulse Studies and Chinese Medicine and Transformation. He's very big on integrative medicine, wrote a great article asking, is Chinese medicine integrative medicine? And talks in that about how the Chinese have always integrated from other cultures. And I would say that, way back when, all of them were integrating. The Greeks took from the Egyptians, and the Arabs took from the Greeks, and the Chinese, and they really were very active, learning from each other. So anyway, so that's about, I'm sorry, I didn't show you the website. Let's see, which one of these is?
I think you had that in the webpage already too.
Yeah. Oh, you know what? The one that you want is not there, so I'm going to add that after the show. It's, as I recall, it's astromed.com. Okay. It's either that or MedAstro, but it'll be showing in the video.
Okay.
So let's go. One other thing I wanted to show you. I'm going to take one more detour while we're at it.
Yeah, we still have a few minutes. I just want about 5 minutes before we run the vid to share some credits here.
And I want to show you all that we now have a Facebook group, the Herbal Knowledge Keepers.
Yeah.
Facebook group, and it's open to the public. So in that, I'm regularly adding some of the fascinating new information that I come across that I'm adding to the database. So if there's an area that you're interested in, chances are, ever since you looked at it, I've already added more to it. And sometimes I think it's really important. So I'll highlight it in this group, and it's also a place where folks are talking about, whatever's on their mind in terms of herbal medicine and health and that sort of thing.
And one of the invitations that Dakota extends with her herbal database is, if you have information that you feel is very significant, you can contact Dakota and you can put it in there, and she'll add it to this database. And just to go back much earlier, we had in the chat room, we had a question, and I did answer it. And the question was, does the database contain information on harvesting? And indeed it does. I mean, it's extensive.
Yeah.
Harvesting, planting, growing, all of it.
So I've just typed that in. You see there's a general heading, harvesting, and then a breakdown: before harvesting, ethical harvesting. And it's under gardening and wildcrafting, and some special things like harvesting plantain and sassafras. So depending on what you're looking for, I'm just bringing this up now. So under harvesting, we've got, how to harvest and tincture aerial parts, how to do it with the flowers, the roots, berries, barks, how to harvest by the moon phase. So yeah, the answer is yes. Yes. So let's go back to, Jupiter. I want to, we do have a few minutes, good.
Mhm.
So I'm just going to lift this up. So you can see there's information here about the planet itself and physiologically what it does. It rules the liver, the arteries. I'm not going to read all this. The
Mhm.
circulation. It has certain images associated with it. And then you'll see that there are certain diseases that are related to, thought to relate to Jupiter. What metals, minerals, scents, and the therapeutic effect of Jovian plants. So if something's said to be ruled by Jupiter, it's probably going to be stimulating, antispasmodic, soothing, emollient, all these things. But one other thing that's going to come up in the interview is about Culpeper, and so I'm going to bring him up. Oops, I'm not spelling that right.
Interesting that planets and plants are very similar.
In the word.
Yeah, in the words.
So you're going to hear in the interview with Will about Culpeper, and there was a type of astrology that he used, which is still used, and Will Morris finds highly effective, called decumbiture. And here you can read about it. Now, if you're interested in having a consultation with Will, he is available for that.
Mm-hmm.
Now, with decumbiture, this is something that's done only, well, generally it's going to be with acute illness, like the moment you notice that you are sick, if you record the time, the date, write it down, a chart is drawn for that time, and that's used to help determine what kind of therapy you need and what's going on. So here we've got links to, teach you about what it is. And it's a specialist form of medical astrology. It flowered in the 17th century. Culpeper was big with it, Saunders, based upon the time a patient falls ill and decides to go and lie down. So anyway, just know that you can come back to this. This is in the history section of the database. So once you get into that, if you really want to know more about this period of medicine, and this is when plant alchemy was really big, you can come in here and learn about these different practitioners and what they were doing at that time. Mm-hmm. Okay. We only have a short time before we bring Will on. So we should ask if there are any questions before we move on.
Right. Any questions? And then I have a little presentation here to share.
Okay.
Okay. But if anyone has questions, you're always welcome to come into the chat room, and that's at the live feed, Conscious Consumer Network. And I think I want to share that, for those of you that are a little timid, when you're asked to sign up for the chat room, you are not automatically seen unless you put something, you say something and you click on it to enter into the chat room. So you can always prepare yourself, be in the chat room, and then when something inspires you or you're ready to speak, you can write something in. So just so you know that you're not outed and you don't end up on the program unless you want to, then we can invite you into the Zoom room and the live feed. So if anybody has any questions, the other thing is the phone number that is on the broadcast window. You can always call in, ask a question. And again, you have the option. You would just be on the phone. We would just have your audio. So I know some people are a little shy till you do it a few times. You get used to it.
I do want to add, are you finished?
Yeah, that's not the presentation I want to do though. Okay.
Can I say one more thing and then get handed over to you?
Yes, go ahead.
Okay. One closing remark on this that I think is really powerful is that in nature, it's cycles that have the power. There's power in cycles. And that's one of the principles, the cyclic nature of transformations that happen in nature. That's part of what in Spagyrics is looking to capture. And it's something that we're becoming more and more and more aware of is the cycles in our own bodies. For women, for example, who are still menstruating, each week of the month you should be eating different foods to nurture the action of the hormones that are happening at that time in order to have hormonal balance. We eat seasonally also, different foods for each season, and Chinese medicine is really big in that, but we're increasingly aware of that here too. There's a circadian rhythm, a daily rhythm, so it matters when we eat and what we eat at what time. These are all kind of alchemical principles that are real practical. And that's the sort of way that they're thinking in plant alchemy is about all of these different cycles and how they work together in us and around us.
I'm so glad you brought that up because I have a client that I was just having that conversation yesterday. Oh. And they were asking more specifically, what could they do during that period of time?
Well,
so
I'll
this
say
is good.
I'm giving a class on it, May 8th in Rogers.
Oh, nice.
Called Plant Allies for Women's Cycles.
Oh, May 8th. Okay.
And I may give the class again here in Eureka at Flora Rohan.
Okay. I'll encourage that client to participate.
Okay.
Okay. Are you finished with your part there?
I am. It's all yours.
All right. Well, what I want to do is today we are actually being sponsored, our internet, and I want to acknowledge the two businesses that reside here. Number one, I want to acknowledge, I'll come back to you, Laura, in the chat room. We have a question there. Okay, I want to acknowledge Caveman Consulting, Caveman Computer Consulting here in Eureka Springs, Arkansas. That's one of the businesses that are here. The owner, Travis, is an incredibly intelligent and helpful being in all kinds of mechanical ways. So I want to give our bravos to Travis. Also, he has recently launched as part of his business to do drone videos. And that's those aerial shots. He's got the equipment. He's got the know-how. So I'm going to encourage anyone who's looking for that kind of promotional work for their own business or personal, contact Travis and he's on Facebook. It's Caveman Computer Consulting. Also, the other business that's shared here is the director, Tamara Jonason. She has a professional ballet studio and offers integration of dance, qigong, yoga, has been in the field for many years. And there's going to be a production this Saturday. It's called Plant Speaks, and it'll be an integration of ballet, improvisation, theater, spoken word, and media delivery. Please, that's all over Facebook. And again, we're in Eureka Springs, Arkansas. So I'd like to encourage you to come and support the studio that's supporting us. And one other thing, we're getting close here, is Full Bloom Productions. One of the projects that I've mentioned not too long ago is I'd like to be able to launch a third program with CCN that would be the documentation and the development of the new eco-sustainable village and model called Hawk Hill here in Eureka Springs, Arkansas. And so I'm putting a call out. We're a nonprofit, Full Bloom Productions, Ozark Artist Healers. You'll see the website on our broadcast window. We're looking for sponsors that would be interested in supporting the funds, the budget that's necessary to work with CCN and also for our internet service. And also wanted to let you know that just like I did for the computer business here with Travis and the professional dance studio with Tamara, we can sponsor you. We can do a 10-second spot. We can advertise you on this site. And so please make a donation to fullbloomproductions.org and get your ad on here. We will advertise you. And I think that's it that I wanted to add. Like I said, you can just Google those guys, and they're on Facebook as well. So I think that may be it.
You had a question.
Oh, yes. I want to come back to the chat room. Question was, let's see. Oh, well, first of all, I have sage flowering. This is a good time to harvest. Asking, is it time to harvest?
Where does she live?
She's here in Eureka.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. Sage flowering. Is this a good time to harvest?
Usually we try to harvest. If you're looking for the leaves, you want to harvest before it flowers, or just as it's beginning to flower, because every time there's a change in the plant, one part gives up its energy to another part. So right now, because it's flowering, all of its energy is going into the flower itself. But that's not necessarily bad, because then you're looking at a flower medicine, right?
Right.
So what I would do if you've missed, it's like the leaves are not going to be quite as strong. Also, it's a little early anyway, because for the leaves of sage to have a high essential oil content, they need to be stressed out by heat of the sun. And when it's cool the way it has been and wet, it's not going to have a lot of essential oil. So you can cut it back, and maybe at this point wait for a lot of flowers to come out, and be thinking in terms that you're going to capture the medicine of the flowers. You can still tincture the leaves with it, of course, but it should, depending on how you prune it, it probably will be ready for a second harvest once it gets hot out. And so once we hit summer and it's hot, that's when you're going to get really good quality medicine from the leaves. Even after it's flowered and you've trimmed it, it's going to come back, so you can have another harvest.
Nice. Thank you, Dakota. All right. And thank you again, my beautiful co-host, so knowledgeable. And thank you to the viewers. We're getting ready now to show the pre-recorded interview with Will Morris. I really encourage you to stick around for it. It's absolutely, it's very mind-opening.
Yeah.
And next week, next Tuesday, same time, it'll be my other co-host, Rebecca Hahn, and we'll be delivering Get Lit. So thank you, everyone, for being with us. Look for us on Facebook, and don't hesitate to ask us questions, give us feedback, and definitely go visit the herbaldatabase.org.
And join us on Facebook. Even if you're not yet a member of the Herbal Database, there's still going to be a lot of good stuff there for you.
Right on. All right. Thank you, everyone. Thank you, CCN.
Hey.
Welcome.
Hi.
Hi.
See you.
It's been a while.
It has. Maybe a couple of years. 2
Yeah.
years.
Yeah, well, you said that you last time I talked with you, you were having dreams of a grand retirement, but that didn't happen, apparently.
Well, I managed to retire from the presidency of AOMA,
And that's big.
Graduate Integrative Medicine. That was successful, and it's a work in progress.
Yeah, it takes a while to move on to new things. So what are some of the new things that you're doing now that you have a little more time?
Well, my main focus is, of course, my intended primary focus at the time was to teach, write, and practice more.
Yeah.
And what has unfolded, however, is that the astrological focus of my practice has really taken off.
Really?
And that was something that I did back in the 70s. I was practicing astrologer. I did my first reading in 1977. And I was studying with a woman who did medical astrology, and she told me, if you want to do medical astrology, you have to study medicine. Imagine that.
Yeah.
And so I did. And so since then, in my practice, I've used astrological consideration. This consideration of the signs is an expanded field of the sign. So we have, in medicine, of course, we have signs and symptoms that we use to understand what's taking place in the person that we're trying to help. And so, and this goes back to old traditional cultures, right?
Right.
Early Greek, sure, Native American, all early cultures take into consideration the conditions of the sky as an extension of the symbols and signs of what's taking place in life.
Right.
This is really one of my driving interests.
You know, one of the things I find so interesting about this is that you have a lot of credentials now in medicine and science, and it seems that you are an excellent bridge, therefore, between our current understanding of medicine and the ancient understanding of medicine, kind of like drawing that link from the stars to the cells of the body, you know, and everyone that I mentioned this topic to was absolutely astonished that it is still alive, that it is something that's respected and used in medicine. You know, a lot of folks think of it as from the bygone years, the Renaissance maybe, medieval times, Culpeper, that sort of thing. And the fact that here you are with so many years of medical practice and education behind you, coming to the realization, well, I mean, you've known this all along, but you're bringing it out that this is valid.
It's valid. I remember teaching East-West medical history in the schools, and at a certain point in the development, of course, one has to consider astrological assessment as a feature of medical practice, which is, as you're correct in that assumption of Renaissance, pre-Renaissance, medieval, those pre-modern disciplines. It was a formalized part of the practice for many providers, and so what I would do is demonstrate the method. Usually, oftentimes it's Culpeper's method. I demonstrate it, and he's about 1500s, somewhere around there. Anyway, so I demonstrate his method, and it's actually quite astonishing how close the astrological tools for assessment would lead to a humoral diagnosis. And when I say humoral, I'm referring to the ideas of hot, cold, moist, and dry. And it was just astonishing how close the astrological assessment would come to what, say, a traditional Chinese medical practitioner might come to a conclusion.
Okay. So you've been integrating different forms of medical astrology, the Chinese, the Hindu, the I guess the Greek. Do they blend together pretty well, or how does that work?
Well, the Chinese is actually almost, in a sense, more numerological. The 4 pillars method of the Chinese astrological method is based on calculations of the birth date.
Okay.
So it's a calendar and numerical setup, which is a little bit different than much of what's practiced in India or Persia or early Greece, which is all very much the same. And then astrological practices here in the West changed significantly after the Renaissance, and as they would try to come to terms with the legal environment in which they were practicing. This caused there to be a change, and there's a psychologization, I guess that's a word. The contemporary psychological styles of astrology tended to take over, and it was heavily influenced by Western mystic traditions, such as Madame Blavatsky's teachings, and which were called theosophical teachings.
Yeah. Will, in the education that you had to acquire as far as the medical,
Oh,
in the program, was the astrological input a related part of the curriculum, or is that what you had to independently bridge?
I did that independently.
Mm-hmm.
Schools of Chinese medicine are seeking to, and or Western herbal medicine, all are seeking to establish themselves as a credible conversation in the social systems here in the West. So, we could. Some people would say that astrology is one of the worst examples of scientific inquiry.
Mm-hmm.
But I would say that anyone who doesn't believe in astrology probably has not approached the problem scientifically.
Right?
In that they're engaged in a belief and operating from a belief rather than establishing some critical review of the evidence available, which there is some amazing evidence that's available for the use of astrological consideration, and it comes from conventional medicine.
Oh, really? Well,
It's fascinating.
like the effects of the moon, for example, that's pretty well known.
Yeah. Well, for instance, the effect of the moon in psychiatric institutions, for instance, in the summer during the new moon, the incidence of prescription of antipsychotic medications goes up with the new moon. In the fall, during the full moon, the prescription of antipsychotic substances goes up during the full moon. So that's one example. There's an annualized example coming from several thousands of cases where they show increased incidence of sudden infant death syndrome when Saturn is found on an angle in the astrological chart. So that's the horizon, or straight up or straight down. These are the angles.
Right.
Yeah.
And these are from birth charts?
Right, from birth charts. And then last 2 years ago now, there was a study, I believe, released out of Harvard, showing correlation of birth month with disease patterns. And so this is an astrological phenomenon. It's increasing. The amount of data are increasing.
Right.
Now, how would somebody find that kind of research? What are the keywords?
Yeah, my method was to use bibliographic management software called EndNote, which sorts online very, very quickly and easily. And I just used PubMed as the database.
Okay.
So I clicked on PubMed and I entered the keywords diurnal and disease. So I was able to identify, and I did the same thing for moon or month, moon, lunation, month, those keywords, with combined with disease and or health, and then also annual. And I came up with data in support of all three cycles. So you have diurnal, monthly, annual cycles that show up in the conventional medical research as significant.
Yes.
That's awesome. So good to see you.
You too. So I was wondering, there are the traditions you talked about. I think there's another area, like the anthroposophical area and the development of biodynamic gardening in Steiner, that really emphasized the effects of the planets, especially on the growth of plants and the health of the soil. Does that area intersect at all with the kind of medical astrology, or is it still kind of its own area?
Well, I'm fascinated with Steiner's work. He's, of course, an initiate in the Western mystery tradition as well, and so anthroposophical medicine does take into consideration the influence of the planets over plant life, and also mineral life. And so there are good. Usually, it's a physician in the anthroposophical medical movement who publishes on such, but we can see it. We take a look at the cycle of Venus. You know, we look at when Venus returns back to the point where she began a cycle. So that's called a synode. And so when these synodical cycles take place, when it's complete, when she completes, it makes a five-fold. It looks like a flower with 5 petals.
Mm.
So in that tradition, one would consider 5-petaled flowers to be consistent with a Venusian influence.
Okay.
And so that would be how the Steinerian point of view would come unfold, and through similar types of observations, which is very different than Culpeper's approach to the problem. Right, and so Culpeper, I mean, if people read Culpeper, right, it looks like there's some kind of odd inconsistencies.
Yeah.
With his correlation of planets to plants.
Yeah.
And one of the reasons is because it's a loose knit set of connections or heuristics, ways of knowing.
Right.
Right. So Culpeper's heuristic was there's a few considerations. One is the flavor. So if it were a bitter flavor, it may go under the rubric of Mars.
Okay.
If it were like blackthorn with a thorn, it would go under. So the flavor might place it under the rubric of a planet.
Right.
The morphology might place it under the rubric of a planet. So the shape of having a thorn. So all those thorns. So that feature of the rose, the blackthorn, the hawthorn, that has the thorny component, that's a Martian feature.
Okay. Okay, that
Right.
makes sense. Yeah.
Yeah, and then but the beautiful portion of the rose, of course, is a Venusian feature, right, and the pleasant fragrance. So but with blackthorn, its blackness is correlated with the planet Saturn. So sometimes the color will have the connection.
Okay.
Sometimes it will be the function of the plant. So pulmonaria, right? That's a shape thing, right? The leaf looks like a lung. It looks like alveoli of a lung, and so that's a shape-based relationship. If we can take milk thistle, right, and its impact on the liver, and this will place milk thistle under the rubric of Jupiter, because Jupiter correlates liver. So so for these reasons, we can't just say that, like, say, because a planet is under the rubric of the sun, because it's yellow in nature, does not mean that it's a warming plant.
Right.
Oftentimes, plants that are under the rubric of the sun are actually cooling in nature.
Right.
Right? They are anti-inflammatory. They must be cool if they take down inflammatory eye conditions and so forth. So the fact that it goes to the eyes is also the sun, because the sun and the moon and eyes.
Yeah. Go ahead.
Yeah, I'm just curious, Will, because I've been exposed to what we call tropical astrology.
Oh, yes.
Right? The 13
Yes.
constellations, Ophiuchus, the healer. How do you address that?
The problem, the tropical sidereal,
Yes.
I call it.
Yeah.
Well, I really try to use methods that are not subject to either point of view. I see the point of view as a culturally bound perspective. It's a perspective. Now, having said that, the tropical, of course, is based on the seasons, right? The tropics of the solstices, or the Tropic of Capricorn. When the sun goes into the Tropic of Capricorn and or Cancer, this is tropical astrology, that movement into the solstice, or the movement into the equinox. So the first day of spring at the equinox becomes the first day of Aries. So this is a seasonally based reference system, completely valid, right?
Right.
So, and from that point of view, you have the first sign in the season is the cardinal sign. It's the initial movement into the season. And then the fixed sign is the next sign. And then the events and the experience of seasonal influences, spring, whichever season it is, become more stable. And these are the fixed signs.
Right.
And then as the weather becomes more unstable at the last portion of the season, it goes into the mutable. It changes. Mm-hmm. And then we go into the next, and then take the movement into the next. We're coming to summer solstice soon. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Mm-hmm. So then the sidereal zodiac, of course, is based on the constellations. And, you know, at the beginning of the age of Pisces, about 2,000 years ago, or ish, they were one and the same. The tropical and sidereal zodiacs were one and the same. Mm-hmm. So now it's moved, and we're about to go into the age of Aquarius. And there's a lot of debate as to when that will take place. Mm-hmm. And so what does that mean? It means that the first day of spring, if the sun will be against the backdrop of the constellation of Aquarius. Right now, it's still against the backdrop of the constellation Pisces. Mm-hmm. And a little less than 2,000 years ago, it was against the backdrop of the constellation Aries. So then the sun at the first day of spring was in Aries, and it's all lined up. And so this is a great year. This is called the Great Year.
Nice.
This movement, right? And it's approximately 24,000 years for it to take the whole cycle. So those people who are avid tropical astrologers, I say, well, you know, how are you going to manage this in 6,000 years from now? Because they will be 180 degrees opposed to each other, right? Yeah. The two zodiacs, and that's if we don't solve this problem as astrologers, and so one of the ways I do that is to use methods that don't depend on the zodiac. Mm. So that's like were you born at the midday? Well, that's a signature for hot. Were you born at summer? That's a signature for hot. Uh-huh. And if you're born at the full moon, all of these are signatures. So all three of those together are pointing towards a little bit more of a hot constitution.
Okay. So
and it has absolutely nothing to do with the zodiacal frame of reference.
Right. Okay.
Got it.
Right.
Nice.
So I'm curious.
It's like a hairball.
Oh yeah,
I know. And it comes up so much. It was like I'm just curious to get more and more information about that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you for asking. That's yeah, right. It's important, and it's there. Yeah.
Well, it's just interesting. All of a sudden Ophiuchus emerges.
Oh,
right.
That problem.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Oh. Yeah, should we go to that one?
Yeah.
You said so. There's really 13 signs. Well, actually, no, because what we're dealing with is cycle phenomenon and the archetypal division of 12 of the cycle, and the journey of the heroine, right, through the 12 stages of development. And so the shift of belief of scientists or anyone who is looking at the problem is missing the forest for the trees, right? Ophiuchus is there, sure, but it doesn't change the problem that we're really looking at, a 12-fold division of reality, which is an abstraction that humans made to lay over this cosmological feature in order to make sense out of their own lives.
Good. Well said.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Now, another question I have. There was a time, and I don't know if it's still done, and I can't remember the name for this right off the top of my head, but going back to Culpeper around that time, and it begins with a D, I remember that, was a type of astrology they used based on when somebody felt so sick they had to lie down, and at that time they drew up a chart. Are you familiar with that method?
I am. Yes, sure. This is called decumbiture.
Yeah.
And Culpeper used to take great exception to what they used to call piss doctors, and these are the docs that would take the urine and draw a chart for the moment of the urinalysis.
Oh. Gee, wow.
And they wouldn't even have the person there. They'd just have the urine, they'd drop the chart, and they'd look at the urine and make their judgments. And Culpepper's opinion was that the decumbiture was the way to go. And I have to agree with him. When you have a person who knows the date and time of when they had the origins of their problem, which is not all that common these days, right?
Yeah.
Because for people who have chronic degenerative conditions, which is the general state of affairs, there's no point in time that can be identified usually.
Right.
But the decumbiture, I did a decumbiture chart just yesterday, and it was far more salient than, I don't call it the piss chart. It's a consultation chart. It's the chart for the moment of the consultation.
What kind of things do you find in a decumbiture chart? What kind of information can you get from that?
Right. Culpepper gives certain rules for this, right? And so we can look at the ascendant and its condition for the robust nature of the constitution of the individual. We look at the nature. So there's a number of houses that receive due consideration in a medical astrological consultation. So we look at the ascendant as representative of the body of the person, also the moon. Then we look at the sixth house for the disease process. So the sign on the sixth house, the planet which rules it, and its condition, the aspects it receives, the sign in which it's placed. Then we can look at, and I kind of expand the horizon from where Culper had it, but he also had that if you want to understand the nature of the relationship between the patient and the practitioner, look at the relationship between the two planets. The ruler of the seventh will be the practitioner, and the ruler of the first will be the client or the patient. And then the nature of the medicine to be prescribed is prescribed. So here he gets into using both antipathies and sympathies. So the sympathies are kind of like homeopathy. We're treating the same. And the antipathies are like a lot of times with herbal medicine, we're using opposite. If there's not enough blood, we're going to use a blood tonic. Right? If there's inflammation, we use an anti-inflammatory. So we oppose the condition of the sixth house and its ruler.
Okay.
And we sympathize with the condition of the 10th house and its ruler.
Okay.
So these are some basic methods coming from Culpepper. And then there are, of course, the assignment of the anatomical parts, which go with the houses. First house all the way down to the feet at 12th house, and also the signs from Aries to Pisces, head down to the feet. Those are taken into consideration. Each sign has a humoral influence, right? So your fire signs are hot and dry. Earth signs are cold and dry. Air signs are warm and moist. And water signs are cold and moist. And so this is kind of the basic assignments of humors. So if let's say Aries is rising, Aries is a hot sign, hot dry sign, and Mars rules it, and it's a hot dry planet. But that Mars is in Pisces, a cold wet sign. Then the person's condition will be affected by some cold moist features, and that should be taken into consideration.
Okay.
I have a question about...
I hope I haven't gone into too much detail.
No, that's...
I love it.
Yeah, no, this is awesome.
Good.
How would then, like, transitions and squares and sectiles, is that, like, does that give you a more specialized aspect of understanding in the treatment and diagnosis?
Yes, it does. In terms of prognosis, hard aspects are, of course, considered to be more aligned with pathology, whereas the easy aspects are more ease. So if let's say the moon is leaving a square to Saturn, and they're complaining of musculoskeletal condition, and it's going to a conjunction of Venus. Well, we would expect that they would have some relief. So the aspects tell us about time.
That's
Now
wonderful.
that's yeah. So, but that's in the when we're looking at either the decumbiture, the chart of coming down with the illness, or the consultation chart, the moment of the interaction, the clinical interaction. Those are for assessing the current condition and its time frame, whereas the natal chart, the birth chart, is used for assessing the condition, the constitution,
Right.
what they came in with, the circumstances of their life that are affecting where they are. And so that's actually a very important thing to get clear on, because we can see out on the web people talking about astrology, and they ask questions that are more appropriate for decumbiture or for a consultation chart they're asking those questions of the nativity, and that's actually not correct approach to the problem.
And so overall, one of the significant things, the message that you're introducing here, is that we need to get very tuned into the origin of the illness, or, right? Know in the moment when you go, whoa, I just didn't feel good, or I feel a little feverish. And we would typically ignore that until we're in a full-blown fever a week later, or the flu. It's like,
and that would be true of an acute condition. With something like arthritis, diabetes, this becomes much more difficult.
But is a medical astrology then still useful for the chronic conditions, and how would it be used there?
Well, one can see tendencies. For instance, hard aspects between Venus and Jupiter in the natal chart might be suggestive of a person having an increased risk of diabetes, developing diabetes. Something along
so that's been figured out. That's there's enough information and evidence and all of that sort of thing to be able to look at a chart and say these are the types of health conditions that we have today, which weren't so common in the past. These are indications that this type of degenerative disease or whatever will happen. And do I understand
it
that?
would be right. It'd be like a suggestive of increased risk. We wouldn't say causal. I wouldn't give it a causal. I think it's a correlative. It's part of this whole picture of our life that we're engaged in. And it helps us to understand where there might be some trends. And some possibilities.
So would you have, do you have the ability to basically say collectively right now, what are the likely conditions that we're most prone to because of the collective astrology?
That's not an area of specialization for me. For my practice is really one-on-one clinical. But if you're talking epidemiology, certainly the French College of Physicians was castigated for having said that the Black Plague was due to, I believe, a conjunction of Saturn with the north node of the moon and Mars, I believe. It was that cluster, and I could be wrong on that. But in any regard, of course, once they discovered rats as a vector, that was the end of that. Well, what they missed on that was that actually it's an eco-psychosocial frame. We have this universe in which we're operating, we're not separated from, and it's in this need to isolate causal inferences that comes in our contemporary way of thinking is causing us to miss potential collaborating influences. Which is kind of like weather, right?
I know that you've been working for many years on integrative medicine, and even on the maybe pioneer
fringe of developing a whole new model of medicine. We need a new model of medicine, and I do see trends, you know, of where that's happening. I'm wondering, do you see, obviously, this work of herbal astrology or medical astrology or eco astrology fits into that whole big picture. Do you see, with all of the experience you've had with it, that there's a more open-mindedness by practitioners to learn this and use it?
In certain circles,
Yeah.
and it, you know, and it depends on where people are situated with it. But I would say yes. I mean, I feel certainly more comfortable coming out with it. I mean, 10 years ago, I just kind of kept it to my practice and didn't put it out there.
Yeah.
And now I feel totally comfortable just putting it out there, and people can take it or not. But but we are starting to see evidence. I have a buddy who does research using neural networks, and he's identified some very strong astrological correlations with the development of breast cancer. And so now all of a sudden we are looking at this and going, well, oh my heavens, what if the insurance companies get a hold of this? So we have to be careful what we do and how we approach it. I think because corporate interests are at the door, you know, and that's actually one of the drivers of the whole conversation, of course, of what medicine is in this contemporary life.
Yeah.
Have you created the software yet, Will? For
I'm not a software guy, but I use software, and you know, and you asked about aspects. Maybe we can return a little bit to aspects, because because aspects transcend the constellational problem of whether it's sidereal or tropical, right?
Yeah.
That relationship of moon at the full moon, when the moon and the sun are opposite each other in the sky. It's a powerful moment, right?
Yeah.
And everyone's resonating with it, and so are the dogs, right? And the coyotes, and, you know, and animals are all restless and everything. So that's something which is present no matter what culture an individual's coming from. And so what interests me is, in particular, when three planets come together in a structure which is so tight that it is exact. Like, they're in the same degree.
Yeah.
Right? So the zodiac has, 360 degrees. The sky is divided into a circle of 360 degrees. Each degree's got 60 minutes. So anything that's under about 6 minutes of being exact is a tight-wired feature of the individual psyche.
Right.
And so what also interests me is the intersection, not just of the plant world, mineral world, the different kingdoms, right? With these cycles of unfolding of our karma as humanity in the context of all these relationships, but also sound frequencies, because I also came to it from the point of music. So I use tuning forks that are tuned to the orbital speed of the planets, and then they're multiplied up into the audible range. And then those are used as physical agents on the body to evoke some kind of a transformative moment, or to bring about some coherence, resonant coherence at various levels of being in an individual.
This brings to mind the work of people like Dan Winter.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, and Brian Greene. You're probably familiar with Brian Greene's work, right?
Yes.
And all of the work in theoretical physics, where they're starting to recognize the universe as information. And so this all fits. If we think of the universe as a place where consciousness is primary, and it's information that is manifesting all of these complex forms, then the mathematics and sacred geometry that you're talking about seems to have now more of a scientific foundation in terms of our understanding and ability to explain what's behind all of this.
Well, it's as if, too, the resonant sounds, the more we're able to accurately record and sense the sounding and vibration, I'm sure it's offering the coordinates of this astrological mapping.
Mm-hmm.
It can do that.
Yes.
Yeah. So now we're, and just out of curiosity, I've been hearing tuning forks in the background. Have you been playing some tuning forks?
No, I have nothing going on here. I mean, if we were at my house, I would have probably had something going in the background.
Well,
No.
Will, for the most of our session, when you're talking, there is a tuning fork background. I'm curious to see if it's going to record that way.
Oh, that's
Have you
funny.
heard it?
Wow.
Well, I hear something, but I haven't
Tuned into it. Yeah, yeah.
Anyway.
I thought, okay, cool.
So, Will, you are, your work is available to clients. If someone watches this and they really want to have this kind of a medical chart done and a consultation, that's that's work that you've made available, right? Or you're not just working with your students in the school. You have a client.
That's right.
Okay.
Right. I work in the clinic here.
Mm-hmm.
I see patients with students. Some of my students all study my astrological methods and use them in the clinic. So that's all day Wednesday, and then I have other days that I'm treating in the clinic. And so that's for people here local. I also do consultations via Skype or Adobe platforms to people that are in different locations. And the astrological chart is used to inform herbal prescribing, and there's different methods. I described a little bit about how that takes place based on Culpepper's methods, but there are other methods that I use based on the nodal axis of the moon and the eclipse points and so forth. There's tools for or looking at cycles and using herbs in the context of cycles of unfolding, but also classical homeopathic prescribing, which is triggered by the dialogues of the chart, so it's more formal classical style, and then also nutritional considerations and or other types of internal work that the person might do relative to the conversation that's unfolding. So yes.
So sometimes
and I can be reached at let's see. Oh, I have a website. It's called medastro.com, 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 and people can email me through that website.
Also, you're in the database, the Herbal database, and I will add that link to your listing in the Herbal database, so people can find you there too. We'll have it with this video, but also
yes, we'll make reference to you in the show that we present this video in as well.
Oh, wonderful.
But I have two questions, if I may.
No, you can't ask anything more.
Well, now I'm just all jazzed. I'm so jazzed about this.
Questions. What did you do?
How many have we hit so far?
Okay, this is what just came to me because I thought when you talked about sympathetic and empathic, I thought, do you explore the possibility of, once you identify astrologically the condition of the patient, and you know what its sympathetic or counterpart antidote would be, have you done anything to the extent of you bring in someone who has that astrological design so that their empathic company becomes the healer?
Oh.
Did you?
That's wonderful. So,
I mean,
well, one can do. I mean, I don't go out and find a person for them, but I mean, that's often what we do, right?
Yeah.
We either find somebody who aggravates it, or
right. I mean, this could be a whole new dating, medical astrological dating software.
Exactly. And that goes on. That's synastry. This is called synastry. Relationship astrology is, in a conventional astrological consultation, people are usually wondering about relationships, childbearing,
money,
their childbearing years, their business success, and these are
Right.
probably the top ones. And then occasionally someone's going to ask about spiritual stuff, and they're going to really be looking at their patterns,
Mm-hmm.
their patterns of behavior over a lifetime, and how to understand them more deeply.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So it just seems like getting that medical compatibility would be a next critical aspect to put into a astrological reading.
It's right, and if one has medical skills, as a herbalist,
Yeah.
I think herbalism is probably the best weave with astrological technique. Certainly, there's some physical medicine types of materials, but if a person's coming from a more conventional medical viewpoint, sometimes it's a little bit hard to come to the level of complexity and uncertainty that's around which the wisdom unfolds with the astrological points of view.
Got it.
But it fits with vitalism pretty nicely.
Yeah, it fits with vitalism very well, and Culpepper's method is, I think, in a sense, at the pinnacle of the practice. As long as one understands that it's, as anything, it's not perfect, but if it provides insight that moves the case along in a way that the person gets better, this is useful.
Who are some other historical figures that used medical or herbal astrology that are worth our reading and checking on?
I'm going to have to go look some of this up because I just came across a book of a man for whom there are several thousand cases available online, and there's a book on his method that was just reconstructed. So if you'll just forgive me for a moment while I see if I can find it.
Yeah.
This reference, I think it's worth taking a second to do this.
All right, good.
And maybe we'll...
Of course, there's Gadberry. There's all these names that I can toss out there, but this one in particular, I think, it made a huge difference.
And if you could put it in the chat for us so we can see...
Absolutely. Okay, so, well, here... there's this... This is great. A woman named Louise Kurth, C-U-R-T-H, and I'll put this up in the chat room.
Okay.
She published a book on English almanacs, Astrology and Popular Medicine, from 1550 to 1700.
Oh, wow.
Now, oh my God. And so all this rich correlative folk data are present in these almanacs.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, nice.
Yeah. She references 1,392 almanacs. So
oh my gosh.
If you're a person who believes in big numbers as a way of understanding reality, I guess. And then this is it. This man's name is Simon Foreman.
Okay.
And it's called the Casebooks Project.
Okay.
And the Casebooks Project, so one can just go Simon Foreman, the Casebooks Project by Google and end up. And there are now 48,500 cases live.
Excellent.
And most of them are medical astrological. And then his book was recently published called The Astrological Judgment of Physic.
Huh.
And that's Simon Foreman.
Okay, thank you. That sounds like a gold mine.
Oh, it's a gold mine. Yes, yep, that's right.
Nice.
Yeah.
The second question I was going to ask you, Will, is just for viewers who might be interested in the healing work with you. What is your basic protocol? Like, do we have to come to you with an our natal chart, or do you give us assignment?
So when a person contacts me seeking a consultation, I ask them for their date, time, and place of birth. Preferably as it was recorded on their birth certificate, and hopefully it was. Not all places do that. But as accurate a time as possible is what's necessary. And then I do all the calculations because I study it in advance, and I have software that I use for looking at some of the things that I take into consideration.
Okay.
And I wanted to correct the record on a research piece that I cited earlier, which had the birth month effects to do with birth month effects in lifetime disease risk. It was published in the Journal of the American Medical Informatics Association. These are kind of like librarians, electronic librarians, right?
Yeah.
And they assessed 55 diseases that were significantly dependent on birth months.
Okay.
And they used 1,749,400 patient records at New York Presbyterian Columbia University Medical Center. And these people were born between 1900 and 2000. So that's the study. It was done at the medical center there at Columbia University in New York.
That's impressive.
Yeah, it's pretty impressive. And so this is the kind of thing I'm talking about.
Yeah.
I mean, I've got other stuff here. I mean,
Well, that's a good. It's going to take us a while to get through 1 million of whatever of that, and then this other fellow you talked about, how many thousands. I think we've got a good start, and folks know how to get a hold of you because, like I said, everyone I mentioned this to, they were so curious and eager to learn more about this, and I think that it just validates this kind of work where, especially where there are case studies and this kind of data collecting that can validate a lot of this. Of course, we know from our ancestors, they weren't fools. They were very intelligent and had many thousands of years to work this stuff out. And so here we are. There's a convergence. Terence McKenna referred to it as the archaic revival.
Great phrase.
Yeah. A convergence. The more advanced our science gets, the more respect our elders get. You know, this ancient understanding of the energetic of the universe is what they were working with, and that's what we're getting back to. So anyway, you know, we could talk and talk and talk and talk, and I really have enjoyed this and want to pick this up again at a later time. Are you making any plans at all to come back to Eureka Springs, or is that on hold?
I would love to come back to Eureka Springs. What
Okay.
an amazing spot. It's very magical.
It is, and I would love to see you again in person and spend more time with you. So I think probably we've gone as long as we should, or we'll get in trouble with the astrological sign for the show.
Well, I mean, it's been it's just a brilliant exchange with you, Will. I'm just so grateful for the information and who you are and what you're doing for all of us. Thank you.
Is there anything anything that we didn't touch on that you felt was important to bring out?
No, we hit on a lot of things that I thought were important.
Okay.
And maybe we'll have something more for a later conversation.
Yeah, we should save something.
This will continue to grow and expand as people keep conducting further inquiry. I'm so grateful that the two of you took time to do this.
Yeah. Well, thank you.
Really appreciate that.
Yeah. Well, we're all the herbal knowledge keepers, so we have to keep this conversation going and sharing all of the incredible work so many people are doing and discoveries, and it's really exciting. So thank you for having the courage to plunge into what many have thought is an obscure field that has vanished, thank God, once and for all.
Yeah.
You know?
Right on. Power to us.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, thank you very much.
If we want to change the world, we must first change the media. Mainstream media exists for the purposes of indoctrination and manipulation of public perception. The world of free and independent media is growing, and with the upsurge in information now available in the public domain, it has never been easier to access free and independent media. The exploration of this information resulted in an experimental project which would provide a fully supported space for researchers, whistleblowers, and seekers of all kinds to express themselves and educate the world. On the 1st of January 2015, Conscious Consumer Network was launched to the world. Nobody thought we would make it this far, but CCN is the longest running free and independent media network of its kind. CCN is a unique collaboration of hearts and souls, bringing you information from different perspectives to educate and inform. Since we started CCN, we have had only one desire, the pursuit of a free, fair, just, sustainable world, and this has not changed. Having overcome many challenges over the last 2 years, CCN is here to stay, and we've got great things lined up for 2017. Help keep CCN on the air by supporting the 2017 Network Support Fund.